Hey everyone, welcome to another CG Cookie live stream. Today we are interviewing Sean Kennedy, the famed VFX artist. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't know about that famed, but here I am, and I am a visual effects artist. So,
Well, I looked up on your IMDB earlier. There's a lot
Mhm.
of Sean Kennedys in film. There's
Yeah,
like some stunt guys, some actors. Have you ever been like in the wrong meeting for the wrong Sean Kennedy?
I have not, but I have a few times. Things have popped up in my IMDb that I didn't work on,
Oh
that
man.
I've had to report and say like that's not me. So that's happened, but thankfully, never been in the same building as another film industry Sean Kennedy
That's
yet.
good. You'd have to fight them, and if they're a stunt guy, it's probably pretty hard.
Yes, I would lose for sure. Just a mouse pusher. So yeah, I'm going down for sure.
Man, well, thanks for coming to chat on a Saturday. We were talking a
Of
little bit
course.
earlier about how everything's kind of orange, both down there in California and over here. I don't know if it
Yeah.
shows much on the camera, but it's we wouldn't need much VFX for another Mad Max sequel.
So true. So true. Really weird.
Yeah,
Everything smells like smoke outside. Very strange times.
gosh, but hopefully everything's going good with you.
Yeah, yeah, really good. Really good. The quarantine's been strange, but I'm surviving, so can't complain.
Good. One note, just for anybody who's watching on YouTube, we have the chat over on CG Cookie on the site. So if you follow the link in the description, then that's where the live chat is, just so that we don't have to like monitor like three things at the same time. That keeps it nice and simple. And then also, what was the other thing? I think that was it. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, and if audio is weird, let me know, and that way we can correct that because sometimes it doesn't always sound the same over here than it does streamed. I did want to read off some of the films and shows that you've worked on,
Sure.
just because there are some like classics in there, and I don't think
Yeah,
everybody's
all
like
right.
aware of that you've like touched these gems.
Okay.
So you've got
Okay.
Westworld, Stranger Things, Gotham, The Orville, The Gifted, Lethal Weapon, Lucifer, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Walking Dead, Station 19, Minority Report, Life of Pi, R.I.P.D., Land of the Lost, Chronicle, Dinner for Schmucks, The Mummy, Superbad, Evan Almighty, Night at the Museum, Meet the Fockers, Dodgeball, Austin Powers, Alien vs. Predator, Spider-Man 1 and 2, Men in Black 2, and probably the one you're most proud of all, Tenacious D in the Pick of Destiny.
That was a good one. I was pretty proud of that actually. That's a great.
It's a long list. Do you have a favorite or like something that you like? Oh man, that
Oh,
one was like so cool to be a part of.
they've all have their moments. They all. It's weird. Like looking back at them now. Um, they feel like home movies, kind of like you watch now. When I watch one of those, if I watch Tenacious D, as much as I love the movie because I like Jack Black, I think he's funny.
Yeah.
Uh, it's still like when I see shots come up, which is all the time in that movie, I'll be like, oh, I remember we were working on that, and oh, that was a terrible shot. Oh, that was fun. Oh, I can't believe I didn't get to finish that shot, and it's in the movie here. Like there's all, it's like watching home movies, literally. So it just brings back these floods of memories.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good ones. You know, and the memories of the movie are different from the movie itself, right? Like some of the worst movies I worked on were some of the best memories I have of working in the industry.
Oh, interesting. Just because it was just
Yeah,
so absurd, or
yeah, just because of the people. Just 'cause it's all like my first movie at Rhythm and Hues when I went there, which was a big step. I was at this little company of like 4 or 5 people, and then I went to Rhythm and Hues, which had already won an Academy Award for Babe, and was just giant. They had 300 people here in LA, and they had 2 facilities in India and then a facility in China, I believe. So they were just massive. And I was so nervous and I was excited and I couldn't wait to see the software and I couldn't wait to learn stuff. But I was on Garfield 2, which was
nice.
it's not the most exciting movie in the world, and it's not, you go to an Academy Award winning place and you're like, I want to work on whatever the Academy Award winning thing is going to be next year.
Yeah.
But they start you out on whatever's in house. So Yeah, Garfield too, but
That's
not a
cool.
movie that I watch often. But man, the memories of making that movie with the team and stuff, so great. So
That's cool.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. Soul Plane was another one. Terrible, terrible movie. But such great memories of working on it. Such a good time.
That's really cool that you can still have fun like making things that maybe don't turn out that well, that you can still like enjoy the process in it. And I think that's
Yeah.
probably like a really good, I don't know, that's good for a VFX artist, because if you were only going for the ones that like were right on the money, that could be a bit of a
Yeah.
bummer for a
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time, because it takes a long time to make a movie. Like how long is it from like start to end for your particular
Uh,
position?
it depends. When I mostly do TV now, but when I was doing film, it would depend. Like when I was at that little studio, we'd usually spend, I want to say, like 6 months ish on a movie, maybe average.
Okay.
But then when I was at Rhythm and Hues, it could easily be 9 months to a year. I think Life of Pi. I think the studio itself was working on Life of Pi for 3 or 4 years,
Oh
doing like
man.
they had teams doing like a lot tiger research and tests and all that stuff. And then not everybody ramps up. It's a small team early on, but I think I probably worked on it. I probably worked on it for, I'm gonna say, 5 or 6 months, and then they postponed everything. They shut everything down. They were reshooting a bunch of stuff, so work stopped for 5 or 6 months, and then we picked it back up. So yeah, it Rhythm and Hues took longer. I don't know why that is. At the time, I think I thought because they were bigger and because they were prestigious and all that they could ask for more time.
Mm-hmm.
But then they went bankrupt, so apparently we didn't have the money for all that time. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what dictates how long. I know studios set their schedule, when they decide to make a movie. We're going to make Avengers 7, and it's coming out on this date, and that's it now. Nothing is changing unless there's, a pandemic. But otherwise, nothing is going to stand in the way of that deadline of
Sure.
that movie coming out, which is unfortunate sometimes because a lot of times visual effects go off to be free out in the world unfinished or looking bad, or you just run out of time, and it sucks that if you think like, if they had given us 2 or 3 more months, it could have looked a lot better. But
Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't.
Like a lot of the time, it seems like, you watch a movie and some people are like, "Oh, what were the VFX artists thinking? Like this looks so weird or whatever," and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's because they had like 30 seconds to work on it.
yeah. It's very, very rarely the visual effects artists or shop or studio. It's very rarely their fault. A lot of times, oh man, there's so many movies where you be working on something and you make it look as real as you think you can make it, and then they'll come back and be like, "No, it should do this or make that bigger or make it look like this," and you're like, "That's going to look ridiculous. Nothing looks like that." Or even simple things like sky replacements. You'll do a sky replacement with a photo, and then they'll come back with notes like, the cloud edge looks weird and we fix this and fix that, and you're like, that's a photo, like we didn't do anything. uh, so
Sometimes real
you know
life does kind of look fake, and
oh
if
yeah,
you've been working
oh
with
yeah,
compositing for too long, you look in the sky, look at some trees, and you're like, "That's not real."
absolutely, absolutely. Like, I look at everything now and I just see like all the Fresnel around it, and I see how light's bouncing and shadows, and
Oh, it's
yeah, it's
great.
real easy to see when things don't look right.
Yeah. We had a question from Omar on the site that was kind of
Yeah,
related to that.
yeah.
He asked, do directors visit the VFX studios while the production's going on?
Yeah, sometimes they did more. When I was at Rhythm and Hues, they did a lot. Um, just because that's such a massive place, and when a director comes there, they're treated like a king or queen, like waters and an entourage gathered around them, and donuts and all that. The little place I was at, they never came because the place was just too small. We didn't have like a proper screening room and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So they would do all the dailies for the director at the studio. But yeah, sometimes Rhythm and Hues, it was nice because you would, if you worked on the shot, you would be invited to dailies with the director, and then you could actually talk to the director about your shot.
Oh,
Which
cool.
was,
Was that kind of like nerve-wracking a little bit?
Um, maybe at first, like you don't. Maybe I don't know. I guess I don't get that nervous about that kind of thing. I think some people did a lot. I didn't too much. I also used to do creature effects, and we always had actors. Like when you're doing a creature effect or a costume or something like that, the actor has to come and put it on. So you're right there working with the actor that's going to be wearing this in the movie. So I kind of got used to it, I guess, in that, when I worked creature and makeup effects, I would see the actors walking around all the time and the directors.
Mm-hmm.
So I got kind of used to it from there. So when I got to like a place like Rhythm and Hues and the directors weren't coming every day, I almost thought it was weird. Like, why would you not want to see? I don't know. They had other things to do,
Yeah.
and they would come once a week and stuff. But yeah, it didn't bother me too much. It was nice to get actual feedback right from their mouth. And then you hear them say it, and then of course it filters through 6 supervisors again before it gets to you. And by the time it gets to you, it's a completely different note. But then it's just the way the notes are passed around in the industry. But
Oh, sure.
yeah, it's fun. It was nice. And where I'm at now, we don't have a whole lot of directors coming by.
Remind
Maybe
me,
every
where are
once.
you at now?
A company called Cosa Visual Effects. I've been here like I want to say 5 years now, a little over 5.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to. Oh man, there were so many good things that brought up. One of them was you starting in costume design and working with like creatures and things like that.
Yeah.
How did that translate over to you getting into digital effects? And was there any like things that you kind of took from that, especially that maybe somebody who just
Oh,
starts digitally completely doesn't necessarily like get?
absolutely. Absolutely 100%. And it goes the other way too. It's the industry, both those industries are very different, and they have a lot of people in them, both of them, that think this is the way it should be done. Like,
Oh, sure.
like makeup people think like, CG is terrible. Makeup is how it should be done. It looks more real. And then directors and producers are like, no, we need to do CG because then we don't have to decide on it right now. We can decide on it a week before it comes out. So you can make changes and things like that, which is always a pain in the butt. But both disciplines never realized how much it crossed over. Like when you worked in creature effects, everything was exactly the same as digital. Like you would have a concept artist who would draw something. Once it was approved, you'd hand it to a sculptor who then pulled out a bunch of clay and made an armature and sculpted something. And then it would go to the mold makers. They would make a mold. And then from that mold, everybody else would start working. Like the mechanics would start building the understructure, the mechanics of it. The foam runners would start making the skin of it. The painters would start painting those skins once they started coming out. So it's literally like building a creature in
Wow.
CG, right? You
Yeah.
have to sculpt it, then you have to retopologize it, then you have to paint it, then you have to rig it. All those same things, they transfer over. And the creature industry was very standoffish about CG, in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I would try, as I was learning, that's also when I was learning digital stuff, is while I was working in the creature shops. And I would try and tell them, like, if you can paint a creature with an airbrush and paint, you can do it digitally too. It's just you're holding a mouse instead of a paintbrush. There's no fumes.
Oh, yeah.
So the skills would transfer over, like how to layer the colors and how to make it look subdermal when it's not subdermal, and how to, all that kind of stuff. Same with mechanics. If they've studied, like, I worked at Rick Baker's for a while, and he's really famous for a lot of ape stuff that they did. It'd be hard to find somebody who studied how apes move more than Rick Baker, and the CG world could use that information,
Oh,
at least
yeah.
back then. Now they're experts, of course, everywhere. But it
That's
was
interesting that
interesting.
it's such a direct comparison for like the workflow steps. It's
Yeah,
like spot on. Wow.
it's shocking how much, and I wish more creature people had seen it. And it works the same. If you want to do digital sculpting and all you've ever known is a Wacom tablet or Wacom, pick up some clay. Just go to the store and grab some clay and try it out. And it's really fun. And it really, it gives you a sense of things. Like I'm not a great sculptor, but it's just fun to sit down sometimes and just like in Blender, if you're sculpting or if you have a block of clay in front of you, it's fun either way. So
Yeah, that would be super fun. For a while, we had sculpt kits from CG Cookie
yeah,
for like the
I
clay, and
remember that.
I never got into it. I never tried it. Even
So
though
much fun.
like I always thought like, oh, that'd be cool. I just never got around to it. Now I'm kind of bummed because we don't have them anymore.
Oh, that is a bummer. Wes probably has one in his closet or something. You should hit him up. He's
Yeah,
probably
that's
got one
a good idea.
somewhere.
Man,
But it's really fun. But yeah, there's so much you can bring over from when I was doing a creature stuff, building even miniature models. Building miniature models and understanding how things go together and all that stuff. It all translated perfectly to digital.
that's awesome.
So
The
yeah, it was good.
the other question that I had there was, oh yeah, you talked about Rhythm and Hues
Mhm.
quite a bit, and obviously that's quite a story, probably too big to tell here. If I remember right, there's a whole documentary about what happened.
Yeah.
But you were right there with the Life of Pi, and if I'm not mistaken, that's I have a cover photo for this interview with you holding an Oscar.
Oh yeah.
Is that from Life of Pi? Directly
Uh,
after?
Probably. I can't see the picture. Oh wait, yes I can probably. Right? Where is it? Yeah, I can't see the picture right now, but it's probably it. We won two while I was there. We won for Golden Compass, and
Oh,
then
that's
for
right.
Life of Pi. So yeah, that was really nice. It was the same Bill Westenhofer, the same visual effects supervisor, uh, handled both of those projects in house and was the guy to go up on stage and get the award and then bring it back to the studio. And
Wow,
it
that's
was fun.
cool.
Yeah, it was neat. It was a great time.
Nice. When I saw that picture, I knew it was real because I figured, if you're a good enough compositor that you can fake holding an Oscar at the Oscars, then you're probably good enough to just get an Oscar in the first place. So it's got to be real.
Right on. Right on.
Um,
Yeah, those were fun.
Man, and then you talked a little bit about what's going on like during quarantine a little bit. How have
Hmm.
the studios handled that at all? Because I feel like I'm sure they're all totally different, and some of them are very locked down on their content and on their
Hmm.
like footage and all that stuff. And previously, you couldn't take it home with you for sure.
Yeah.
You'd have to do it all there. So have they gone to like working from home a little bit, or is it all like, nope, you can't do anything?
Yeah, they had to. So it kind of forced their hand a bit. We don't. It's still. It's I don't. What's it called? VP or VP VoIPN or whatever. I don't know what it's called. But where I'm just logging into my computer at work,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So my computer's on all day, but I'm not actually using its processor to do anything, right? I'm logging into my computer at work, and I just have a window open, and it's my work computer, so I'm using all that stuff. So it still kind of works the same. Like I can't just like drag footage from my work computer to my home computer, and now I have it and I've stolen it. I can't do that. So it's still just as secure, I think.
Oh okay.
But the only difference is like, if I mean, I work in my apartment, so it's not like uh, anybody's going to see anything. But not being in a locked studio, anybody can walk by my monitor and see what I'm doing. But nobody's here, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, if they wanted to have anything to release, they gotta keep working somehow. So they had to give in
Okay.
pretty quick to that, and I actually didn't miss a single. I didn't miss a single day because of it. I'm super lucky. I'm so
Wow.
grateful.
Nice.
Costa got it up and running really fast. The whole transition. So we did a week at work where we were. They had spaced us out farther, and they split us into two shifts to reduce how many people were coming in at a time, and that was really nice. Strange, but nice.
Hmm.
And then like a week or two of that, and then they said everybody's got to work from home. The whole state's shutting down, and we left on Friday, and they're like, "You'll hear from us. We don't know how this is going to work." And then Monday morning, at 8 a.m. you start getting emails like, "Okay, here's how you're going to log in," and all that. So by 9 a.m. we were logged in and working.
That's
So
impressive.
it was amazing. I'm still shocked, and I'm so grateful because 90% of my friends are all out of work. So I can't believe I've somehow come through this unscathed, or am going through it. And we're not through it yet, but yeah, I'm super lucky. So
Yeah, that's good to hear.
so
And I mean, I'm sure they had to pause like production of like shooting movies for a bit.
they
So
did.
maybe that'll hit later on. Hopefully not too bad. It'll have enough time to like kind of spread out and
Yeah.
not be as um, instant.
Yeah.
But we'll
I don't.
see.
Yeah. We had a. We mostly do TV, but we do movies sometimes. So we have a movie now that we were working on right when it happened. We had a couple TV things we were finishing, and then a movie. And movies tend to have the longer schedules. So, those of us that they kept on just kind of all started working on that movie. And then we did have like 2 weeks off. They'd say, okay, we're going to lay you off. We don't know when you'll be back. So then I get like a week off, and then 5 days later, they're like, okay, we need you back. Which you kind of knew was coming because when they laid you off, nothing was finished yet. So you're like, well, you're obviously somebody's going to
You're like, good luck.
Yeah. So, you get like a 2 week break, then you come back, and then so I'm still working. So there may be another break coming up. I'm not sure, but then I hear that productions are starting to slowly get going again. So maybe in October-ish, mid-October, things should be actually ramping up where they can start bringing back lots of people. I hope so.
Cool.
Yeah.
What are
yeah.
you? I'm gonna ask like, what are you working on now? And I don't mean in terms of like what particular movie or TV show, but like, what's your daily kind of thing that you're doing? I'm guessing compositing, but like, what kind of subset of that, or like, what's your tasks like?
Right now, the movie we're working on has a bunch of things. It has some set extensions that we were working on early on, and then it also has a lot of like digital makeup fixes kind of stuff. I can't say, of course, what the movie is or who it's for or anything like that. But
Garfield 3, it's okay.
Garfield 3. There you go. You nailed it. You didn't hear it here. No. Oh. Yeah, we're doing all kinds of things. There's been a lot of makeup fixes and small things, small details that hopefully nobody would ever notice.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of set extensions as well, which is they only build a certain amount of a street, and then they need to extend on sides. So it's pretty straightforward stuff. Although this week I did get to do some birds, which is always fun. Go back to some birds.
Oh, classic birds. Yeah, if anybody
birds,
here hasn't watched Sean's talks, he's given several talks at the Blender conference and showed a lot of birds. Your birds made it into quite a few films. And it's really funny just to be able to like see those in the background kind of like flapping along. You're like, oh, those are the same birds.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm misremembering this. This could be a totally different person or different circumstance. Were you involved in Birdemic at all?
I was not.
Okay.
Thank goodness. Oh man.
I remember
I've
some
seen it.
story about that where the birds that were there were like not final visualizations. They were just kind of like test renders. And then they just like ripped them off from the email and was like, okay, we'll just use these.
Wow. Yeah, it almost looks like an animated GIF of a bird.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
For some reason that in my mind that was like tied to you, but probably because of the bird part of your talk. But I'm glad you didn't have to go through that.
My birds aren't that great, but thankfully they're tiny in frame, so they tend to look pretty good. But, whew. Yeah, Birdemic, that's a classic.
Yeah. Omar has a good question in the chat again. He says, how many shots would you estimate one VFX artist works on during a movie? He guesses it would be like 5.
It's a good guess. It varies. It could be 5. It's usually not. It depends. It depends on where you are and what you're doing. Like for example, before I was at Rhythm and Hues, I was at that little small studio of like 4 or 5 people. Mm-hmm. And when we worked on that last Austin Powers movie, Goldmember, and I think I always write down every shot I work on. I keep track of everything. And I think I remember working on about 80 shots in that movie in some way. Yeah. Whether it was like wire removal or a CG object or green screen or whatever. It could have been anything, but I think I touched over 80 shots in that movie. And that small studio was like that a lot because all of us that worked there were very generalist. Like we could do 3D, we could do our own tracking and match moving. We could do whatever. So when a movie came in, we would get 40, 50 shots per person, which is always scary because the owner would come in every day and tell us, the deadline's in 3 weeks. That means each of you need to final 10 shots today to hit the deadline. And we were like, that's not possible. So that was crazy. But then when I got to Rhythm and Hues, I thought same thing. I thought, all right, I'm going to get like 80 shots on Garfield 2. I think I had 12 shots on Garfield 2. And I had like a year to do them. So it was a very different situation, very going from, at the little studio, I worked 3 or 4 months without a day off. And then at Rhythm and Hues, it would be 3 or 4 months until I got an element I could start using it to, even like a gray shaded Garfield to put into a scene.
Oh, interesting.
So it was very different worlds. But right now, I don't know, like TV is also different. And COSA, where I'm working now, is also very different. They're very flexible. When I worked in film, when you get a shot, you were very protective of it. And you were like, this is my shot. I'm going to make sure it gets finaled. I'm going to make sure it looks good. And if they took it off of you, it usually meant that either you weren't cutting it or, it was too hard for you, whatever. So it was very bad. Like you always felt this sense of failure if they took a shot off of you. But where I'm at now, COSA, it's very flexible. Like things move around all the time. And if they're like, we'd rather you work on this thing than those 10 shots you already have. So even though you've already started those, we're going to give them all to somebody else and you work on this thing. And you just kind of got to let it go and be like, yeah, cool. I'm fine with that. So that's where I am now is it can be, sometimes it's 10, 15 shots. These makeup things we're doing now on this show, there's I feel like I've touched 100, but I know it's not that many. It's got to be probably about like 25 or 30. But
man, yeah, going through and doing just a million little like quick fixes on like every single. Yeah. I bet that would definitely take time. Another good question is, with so many artists working on the shots, how do they maintain consistency throughout the whole movie or show?
That's sometimes that's tricky, actually. Usually you're on a team, right? So you'll have everybody kind of works together. Or so if somebody comes up with the look of something, then they'll give it to the rest of the team, right? Like maybe early on, if we need to figure out what this force field looks like. So everybody will kind of work on one and they'll send it all to the client. And when they pick one, then everybody just uses that one.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes you feel like you just wasted your time. You're like, I've worked on that for a week, and then they went in a total different direction. What was I doing? But whatever, that's just part of the process, so you get used to it. What else? Other times it's like when I was at Rhythm and Hues, we would have a lead. Every team would have like a supervisor and then a lead compositor and a lead 3D person. And the compositor was kind of in charge of making sure everything was the same, right? So if everybody got a shot, you would have to, if there was an element that would go into all those shots, you had to make sure that element was the same and looked the same. And, there was much more levels of team.
Gotcha. That's a lot of balls to juggle, so you definitely need that.
Yeah. And we have that at COSA as well. We have leads and all that kind of stuff. But at Rhythm and Hues, it was very regimented. It was like you got on a team for your show, and you almost didn't talk to anybody else for 6 months.
Wow.
You'd pass people in the hall and see them at lunch, but yeah, you would not work with other people for 6 months. And then when it was over, then you go on to another team, and you're working for 6 months with other people. So it was very regimented like that. Whereas COSA, it's really wide open. At any given time, I could be working on 4 or 5 different TV shows. So
nice. That sounds like a much more efficient way of doing things. It seems like it's very flexible, and like everybody kind of has their thing that they do, and
it's nice. It's nice to not look at the same 10 shots for 6 months, or move things around a bit or do different things. So I think I like the smaller studio vibe much more than the bigger studio. thing. So
Yeah, totally. I see that you're wearing a Blender artist shirt.
I am.
And we should probably talk about Blender at some point, because this is a Blender education channel.
Indeed.
How have how have you been using that in the past like couple months with the transition to 2.8 and 2.9 now already? I'm
That was
sure
fast.
I'm sure that's
Yeah.
been at least somewhat of a game changer for you. I know the compositor hasn't really changed that much. Motion tracking,
No.
I think, is exactly the same.
Yeah.
But perhaps Eevee and like rendering things out super fast, or has it just been pretty same as usual?
It's kind of the same. It hasn't, like you're saying, it hasn't changed all that much. The things that I use every day are things like, um, not every day, but yeah, motion tracking, smoke sims, particles, stuff like that. And none of that stuff, smoke sim has changed a lot, but most of that other stuff hasn't changed a whole lot.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just try and keep up with the changes, and I seem to always be behind the changes as well.
There's
Everybody
too
as
many.
soon as there are, yeah, it's insane. I'm getting pretty comfortable with Eevee now. Uh, I know it has object motion blur now, which was a big hold off for me because if you're doing particles or whatever, like everything needs motion blur.
Mm.
Birds, whatever, they all need motion blur. So not having object blur for a while was a turn off, but they have that now, and I know they have GI now. I saw this. There's like a shader hack that kind of cheats global illumination.
Yeah, that looks
Uh,
cool.
yeah, it looks interesting. It looks like uh, it's an interesting implementation of it. Uh, it wasn't work. It didn't work when I first watched the video. I was like, oh, that's weird how they put that together. But I'm glad it works. But I haven't dove into it yet. But I still prefer cycles, I think, and but I love all the UI stuff they've done. Some of it's a little perplexing. Like I'm on the team, I guess. Sometimes I think I'm not, but I think I'm still listed on it. That works with the compositor and stuff,
Hmm.
or that kind of tries to give the compositor direction. And when they were doing the UI, I would keep asking, like, why are we moving that over there? Like, it needs to be here. Like, this is where people expect to see it. There's still little things that bug me that they need to be more prominent, and they're making them less prominent. Like in the image viewer, for example, as a
Hmm.
compositor, you always need to be looking at your channels, right? You're always looking at your red
Oh.
channel, green channel, blue channel. You're using them for mats. You're just always looking at channels, always. And there's no keyboard shortcuts for that in Blender. It used to be right under the viewer. You could just click the little buttons.
Hmm.
Now it's buried in a little drop-down menu in the top right. So things like, but then when I say things like that, then they're like, but it needs to stick to the formatting that we're using through the whole program, and I get that, but it's just not. It's stuff like that it's an uphill battle though, so I
Oh
can't.
yeah, sure.
And I get it. Like the compositor, they're not making a compositing program; they're making a 3D program that they've tacked compositing onto because it's useful sometimes. So I get that it's not the focus. So whatever. When they ask, when they have time, I jump in there with my input, but I try not to push too hard because we all know where the compositors, where the shortcomings are and all that. But yeah, it would have been nice to see more changes. But I think they're coming. I saw them on the roadmap. I got really excited. I think I even put it on Twitter, like how it's like with a little graphic. But
Oh yeah, especially also with particle nodes and things like
yeah,
that. I
oh
think that'll
man,
be fantastic.
I cannot wait for particle nodes. I'm so excited. I used to use 3D Studio Max, and they have a particle system in there called Particle Flow,
Okay.
P-Flow, and it's event driven, but it's basically like nodes. It's like each node is basically like a little layered stack that it runs through, like a modifier stack. Then it
Okay.
goes to the next node and runs through, and you
Oh,
can
cool.
pipe those anywhere you want. So it's basically like a node driven, and that particle system was great. So to have something like that coming to Blender is just going to be wonderful. So that'll be nice. But there's still a million other things. A long running list of changes I'd love to see. So
Oh, sure. For anybody who doesn't know, you run a site called OpenVisualFX, and you do
mhm.
tutorials for Blender and Natron and other just like open source software for visual effects.
I do.
And I've never used Natron, but I know that's a open source compositor. Can you give like a quick rundown on that?
Yeah, it's basically like Nuke. If you know visual effects at all, you've probably heard of Nuke, which is like the industry standard compositing tool. And I guess UI design isn't copyrightable, so code is, I think, but not the actual design of the icons and layout and stuff like that.
Interesting. So did they just take maybe the icons from Nuke?
Yeah. So they wanted to make like a where there was no learning curve, right? Because if you learned Maya at school and then you can't afford it, so you try and pick up Blender, the UI is completely different. You have to learn all over again, kind of. And they wanted to kind of bypass that. They wanted to be like, well, why can't you learn on a free program, and then when you get to the studio, you already know all that stuff when they put you on the expensive program?
Interesting.
So they made it look and act just like Nuke, which is great. But it was only being developed by a couple people. There was one main guy, Alex. He's a French guy, and then there was I think 2 or 3 other main developers of it. But then Alex went and did something else. He worked on it for a couple years, and then got hired by another company to work on something else, and that's where he's been for at least a year now. And the other developers that were working on it are still doing like little bug fixes and stuff like that. But there's not going to be any, there's not going to be a 3D environment put into it or a particle system. Like, it's not going to have big new features coming in.
Gotcha.
It needs like
the
main developer.
Unfortunate thing about a lot of open source software is it gets started and gets really, really cool, and then just kind of fizzles out, which thankfully didn't happen to Blender. It certainly could have at multiple times, but it kept on going, and now I don't think it'll stop anytime soon.
Yep, I agree. I tend to think that's because compositing isn't as well known as like 3D can be used for a whole bunch of different applications, right? Like, you can 3D print with it, you can make games, you can make movie effects, you can whatever. If you just want to sculpt things for fun, well, you know, there's a million things you can do with 3D, or even a program like GIMP or Krita. Photographers are going to want it, painters are going to want it. There's a whole bunch of different artists that can use that for what they do, whereas a program like Nuke, Compositing, or Natron, there's really only one thing you can do with it. There's only, like, you could use it for what you would use Photoshop for, but why would you when you have GIMP and Krita and Photoshop and Affinity and all these other millions of things? So I think it's just like compositing is not an everyday word, right? Like, I still meet people where I tell them I'm a compositor, and they're like, well, so what is that exactly?
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if I had said I'm a 3D artist on films, then they instantly know I'm making dinosaurs or whatever. But compositor, no, everyone's like, so what is that exactly? So I just think it's because it's not as popular. It's not as widely usable to. I don't know. I don't even know how to say it. Right. The potential
it's not like accessible
is
to
much small.
Yeah, makes sense. Like, for that, pretty much, if you're doing something small, most people are just gonna like pick up After Effects or something.
Right.
And, like, that's pretty much all that there is out there. For like small productions.
Yeah, sadly. But I still dream of Natron getting picked up again and continuing, or Blender filling in those gaps. So
that'd be cool. We will see. We'll see.
Yeah.
A couple more questions that we got from the chat.
Yeah, please.
And for other people. One of them, again, from Omar. Have you ever added any Easter eggs into a movie? And this was actually in my notes too. I wanted to know. I'm sure you have, but maybe that they'd have to kill you if you like said it. So.
Right. I think I must have, right? I must have. The thing is when you're in dailies and you're jumping, when they're in dailies and they're looking at your latest version, oftentimes they'll switch back to the original plate to see what's changed, to make sure color stays the same, to make sure the film grain stays the same and you haven't changed anything and you haven't lost any details and things like that. So they'll flicker back and forth between your latest work and the original plate that came in.
So you'd have to build it up very subtly over time.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if I put my initials into something, they'd be like, "What's going on down in the corner? There wasn't anything supposed to happen down there." And then they'll look and see stuff. So it's a little tricky. But I think I seem to recall on Austin Powers, I might have very, very subtly painted my initials into some bricks somewhere.
Nice.
And tried to get that by. I think that got by. I'm also, I think I'm in a few things. I'm in Austin Powers a few times at the end. And then I want to say I'm in Starsky and Hutch, although you'd never see me. There's things like that where it's not so much an Easter egg, but that we need people. So you just shoot yourself on a green screen and throw it in. We do that all the time at COSA too, but I actually have yet to go out and they're always like, bring costumes that look like cowboys, and we're going to shoot backgrounds for Westworld. But I don't do it anymore. I should one of these days. But I feel like I did it so much in the Austin Power days, 20 years ago. Let all the younger guys do it. So, and plus finding costumes and blah blah blah, it becomes a whole production. But yeah, I think, what else have I done? I think I keep. I have a model of the Millennium Falcon on my work computer.
Nice.
That every shot I'm always thinking, like, where can I put this in? But I never have. But that's a dream, is just to get something like that in.
That would be too good.
Yeah, it would be pretty awesome. But I think that's really it. I don't know. I don't think I've done anything else. There may have been times where maybe if I knew text wasn't going to be readable, maybe I wrote something, that I don't know. I can't even. I'm trying to think of any examples, but I don't think so.
That was a good answer, though.
They would catch it pretty good, so it's hard to get that stuff by.
Splat asks, what are the? Do you have any top tutorials that you'd recommend from OpenVisualFX? Like, if they're just getting started, do you have a few favorites that you'd recommend?
I do. I have my two longest ones, which are also kind of like the most popular, because it's working all day and then oftentimes doing long hours or working weekends. I don't often get to do long tutorials, which is what I like to do, which is why I set up the website to do let's make a film and do every part of it. And
I mean, the fact that you are doing that on top of your just regular workday, plus that's already known for having long work hours, is
right.
Something in and of itself.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes to be motivated to work a 60-hour week and then be like, yay, I get to do an 8-hour course on Saturday. So I don't post as much long things, but I did years ago I did a map painting kind of set extension tutorial, which it's pretty simple. It's basically just putting some map paintings on cards and spacing them out in 3D space in this, we track the environment and put the paintings on cards, and then we put in some 3D things to help it. And I like that one because it covers everything. I cover 3D stuff. I make birds, tracking and match moving, set reconstruction, compositing, rotoscoping, even using the planar tracker to attach rotos to make roto easier. So I feel like I covered a lot in that. So that one makes me very happy, even though it's for $279. But as we were talking about earlier, the compositor, the rotoscoping, the tracking, none of that has changed very much. So I feel like somebody could probably still follow that tutorial, and they may have to pause and try and find where the button is, but none of the buttons' names have changed.
Absolutely.
They may have just moved which side of the screen, so those should still be followable. But I was really happy with that one. I was really proud of that one. That I was able to encompass so much of what a real shot takes.
Nice. I'll find that and link it in the description for the stream afterwards, so people can check that out.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That sounds like a really good one. And I remember seeing the final result of that and seeing some of the videos. It looks really cool.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, it wasn't anything super complex, but I really tried to cover the range of everything a VFX artist might need to do. So I was happy with that. And I thought about redoing it for 2.8 or 2.9 now. But then I think like, I want to do something new. I can do a set extension one again, but why don't I go shoot new footage and better footage and come up with something better? So
Exactly. That is
uh,
pretty much how we all feel here at CG Cookie.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. What's an example of a recent shot that was pretty challenging? And was it challenging because of the style, the content, or the deadline?
That's interesting. That's a good question. Challenging shot, a recent one. I mean, I have challenging shots all the time. I'm just trying to think of like a specific example that I can also talk about because it's aired or something. Um, let me think. Here's something that was challenging. We worked on Swamp Thing recently. Not recently, maybe like last fall or something. Whenever it was out, it only lasted one season. It didn't make it too far, but we worked on that. And there's lots of like vines, like creatures, plants, obviously, right? Like a guy turns into. I didn't even watch it, so I don't even know. But plants, vines, and things. Vines are chasing people and growing real fast and all that.
Okay.
And at one point, one of the characters takes a rubbing alcohol bottle and stabs it with something so it's pouring out and slides it across the floor to some vines and is then going to light it on fire and try and burn the creature. And I remember they asked me like, we need a trail on the floor of they just shot the bottle sliding. They didn't have any liquid.
Okay.
So I wanted to do something with Blender because liquids and fluids and stuff and just make it real natural. So I spent like a day probably messing around with the fluid sim, flip fluids, and there's a particle setting you can click on called fluid, and it basically gives it like particles like a surface tension kind of thing, so they blob together. Mm-hmm. So I was messing around with all three of those, and I just couldn't get anything that looked like what they wanted or what I knew they wanted. And I ended up just using regular old particles. And it took me a day to figure that out, that why don't I just use regular particles and when they hit the ground, stop them? And you just had to arrange the emitters in a way where as it piled up, it looked like it was leaving a trail of liquid, right? Like water or something, as if somebody took a glass full of water and slid it across the floor, the trail it would leave. And it took me a good day or so to figure that out, that just basic straight up particles was the way to go and really mess with the emitter. Mm-hmm. So that was challenging.
That's actually a really good trick or like point, is that basic particles can do a lot of things. Like if you just have like 5 or 6 emitters like all having their own little jobs, you can make a lot of pretty complex looking effects that like, this looks like a simulation, but it's really just not.
Yeah,
they're just popping in and out and doing their thing.
Yeah, I've bugged some artists in our effects department before in previous years. That work in Houdini. I'll go and I'll see an effect they're doing and I'll say, how'd you get that water to look so cool? Mm-hmm. And then they'll show me, and there's nothing really spectacular about the settings they used for the actual fluid sim. It's all about the emitter. It's about like what's the shape they used to emit, or what texture did they put on it to emit from. And that kind of like changed the way I think about liquids and smoke. Even smoke, people tend to know it a bit more. Like you'll see when people do explosions, they always do the sphere that has like noise displacement and just goes like that, and it instantly just makes that cool explosion shape. So I think smoke people probably get that a little quicker, but with liquids and particles especially, the way you mess with the emitters and stuff can really make some cool effects or let you get more realistic type looking things.
Yeah, that's a great little note. Let's see, what was... Oh, okay. Next question is, when a shot goes to you goes to compositing from you from like a 3D render, what's that like transition handoff like, and what render passes are you usually working with, and what kind of like assets do you get from them?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, actually. The handoff's usually pretty easy. Like most studios have a system where where you'll be notified when the 3D artist finishes what they're doing. They'll do what's called publishing it, which is they'll put it into the system. They'll say, once it's been approved by their supervisor to hand off to the next department, then they'll publish it. I'll get a little notification saying that this asset's ready, so then I can go grab it. We have, when I first started at Costa, we didn't have that much internal software, so you would have to go grab it manually. Just open up a file browser and drag in the files. But now we have a whole system where I'm already subscribed to that task, that project, so I can just go in and grab that new element and hit accept, and it just pops in. And then it depends on what we're doing as far as the element, actually, or as far, like what elements are included in the 3D or the passes in the element. So sometimes if it's something small, they'll just bake it all. Like I'll just get a 3D pass of something with even motion blur baked in sometimes. And that's always nice because then you don't have to mess with anything. But then it's crappy if they're like, hey, take the specular down. And then you're like, oh, well, now I don't have any passes. So what do I do? So yeah, it's sometimes if it's something big that you're going to be working on for a long time, like we've done a lot of in the show Lucifer. Sometimes Lucifer, the character, turns into the devil himself, and it's all CG. And when you get something like that, you get a million passes, and it's all the standard passes I think that you would expect out of Blender or any other 3D program, like diffuse and all your different your reflections and if there's refraction, if there's something clear, you get all those. There's also lighting passes where you'll get they'll set up lights in the scene but not necessarily use them. So sometimes you'll get like these red, green, blue. It goes back to channels. Everything is channels in compositing, where the red channel will be light coming like a key light. The blue channel will be a fill light. The green channel will be a backlight. And then you'll get shadows that way too, like a contact shadow of 3 different levels, right? Like red will be the tight contact shadow, green will be the kind of spread out a bit more, and blue will be a real wide contact shadow.
Oh, that's interesting. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So you get all these different, you get the normal breakdown passes, but then you get a lot of extra stuff too. So if they ask to relight it or to remove a light, you have a pass you can use to kind of, whatever you need to do. Sometimes it looks overwhelming, right? Like sometimes you'll open it and there'll just be passes everywhere. And if they're doing anything specific, like we've also done Lucifer as wings, some bloody. So when there's blood on them, you get all these other passes of like the blood specular and if they only want a little bit of blood, use this pass. If they want medium blood, use this. And,
wow, you get a whole gourmet of or a whole array of things to work with. Yeah,
it depends on the shot though. Like that Lucifer stuff is like hero show defining stuff, so they want as many options as possible. Whereas if it's just something sitting on a table in the background, you may just get it with no passes, baked motion blur, and that's it.
Right,
you get what you get.
That makes sense.
Sometimes we might not even get a shadow. You may have to roto your own shadow. So it varies. But it's interesting that brings me to something I've always wanted to address is like I always see these like compositing tutorials where like today you're going to learn compositing, and then all they teach you is all the passes and how to put them back together into the beauty pass. And I always think like if you want to learn compositing, that's the last thing you should learn. Because if you got hired at a studio as a compositor and it's your first job, they're never going to give you that shot with 100 passes. They're never going to give you a CG element like that. They're going to give you wire removals for your first year. They're going to give you split screens. They're going to give you a monitor, put the screens in monitors and phones and tablets. You're not going to get the touch a 3D thing for your first year.
Oh, sure.
I always think that's really interesting that people are always like, today we're going to learn compositing, and it's nothing but here's your specular pass. Like, that's the last thing you should learn.
Like you'd be lucky if you had that.
Yeah. I mean, you will eventually need to know that. But first figure out if this is the job for you and if you like compositing and blah, blah, blah.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. The passes thing, I prefer to get no passes. The less passes you get, the easier it is. Like, especially being a 3D artist, when I make my own 3D elements for myself,
Mm-hmm.
which I do all the time, which is why I learned Blender to begin with, to make my own 3D elements for my compositing. Um, never render passes. I just render it out, motion blur, baked, and everything. And I figure if I need to adjust it, I'll just go back into Blender. Uh, it renders so fast now, or if it's a long render, if it's like a smoke render or something, I just let it render overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as a compositor who does 3D, I never render my own passes. But
That's funny. That's kind of interesting. I kind of figured that you would be like the master of like ticking all those little boxes, but
I mean, I can. I just if I knew I was going to hand it off to somebody else, I probably would.
Sure. I mean, that kind of makes me feel better because I pretty much never use it when I'm like just making my own personal projects and stuff.
Right.
So that makes me feel better. There's a particular shot that you had in one of your talks of you like removing a camera from a car window.
Yeah.
That one kind of stuck with me as like, wow, that looks extremely tricky. What did you get? Did you get anything in terms of like a backplate or like HDRI or
no, nothing?
That still blows my mind. Can you like recap exactly what that was?
Sure. Yeah, that was a hard shot. Whew. And that's actually the kind of thing. Well, maybe not that shot, but a new compositor would be removing things a lot, whether it be wires or, now they do so much like, hey, remove that off the actor's face or remove that thing off the shirt or whatever. But that was like the most advanced version of that. Is like this removal is extremely difficult. So what it was a car pulls up right in front of where the camera's here. The car pulls up right in front of it, and there's literally the full reflection. It's like pulling, and the car was a black SUV in broad daylight. So it's like a mirror, right? It's like a big dark mirror.
I'll see if I can pull up the example here, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah. And you're literally, as soon as the car comes to a stop in the middle of the frame, you're looking at the camera guy sitting on his, the camera and everything. It's all right there. And then the window rolls down and there's the actor. And while it was rolled up, you could still see the actor. So the reflection was literally over the actor's face, over everything. And then it turns into this the camera then pans up on a crane and goes up, kind of overlooking the SUV and the big crowd around it. And the whole time that camera's going up, you see the reflection in the car. And man, that was just a hard shot. Like they came to me and they gave me like an hour to look at it. They said something like, take a look at this and we're going to come back. How long do you think it'll take? Do you think it can be done? Blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I think it took me like 2 weeks maybe to get that shot done.
That's wild. I found the clip on YouTube. Yeah, let me pull that up.
Oh, excellent.
Because I just want to show that because
yeah,
it's just
please
insane.
Do.
Okay, so you see like the camera in the car reflection right here is just smack in the middle.
Yeah.
And then let's see. There we go. Yeah, it's like warping around the car.
Yeah.
It's really bad. And then you can see the mesh that you created. And then recompositing the reflections and stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's why they brought it to me, is they knew I knew a little bit of 3D, so I could fill in some gaps a little easier than most people at the time that were working there. So I literally used like every trick I know to remove things from a frame. It's hard to even go through it all. Like most people think you just paint, right? Like you would just grab like basically essentially the clone tool in Photoshop. You can do that in compositing programs where instead of just happening on one frame, it happens over the whole course of the frame. A lot of people just use that and think that's enough, but I used that. I used in After Effects they're called solids. In Nuke they're called constants, but it's basically just a solid color. And I use solid colors a lot for things like filling gaps, or if an edge like if I had to key myself right now,
Mm-hmm.
I've got this white background and I've got dark hair. If I did a Luma key, there'd be a white little rim around my hair. So what I would do to fix that, one of the things I might use is choke that matte in a bit to get rid of the white edge. But now I've lost a lot of hair detail. So then I would sample the color of my hair, this brown or whatever, and I would just make a solid color of it, just a solid flat color, and then I would use the matte of the original and kind of put that solid color with the original channel behind it, and it would kind of bring that detail back the same color. So
that's really clever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a really simple, basic compositing trick, but it lets you like harness the power of just solid colors, kind of. And I do that a lot, where I'll use the channels for Luma mats, where you can look at the green channel and crush it down and get certain elements. And then I can, if I know the color that's over, like where that guy's reflection or the camera reflection was, it was darker than the rest of the window. So I'll sample the color of the window where there's no reflection and use a matte to kind of fill it in. And it was just such a pain. The 2D stuff. Once I decided to start doing the 3D, when the camera starts panning up and I needed that whole glossy side of the car, that's actually when it got much easier, because I knew I could fill in anything I wanted. Like I could fill in whatever I needed the reflection in the side of that car to be. I can get clear skies to reflect in there. I can get palm trees. I can get trucks, people, and just literally put it right behind the camera in Blender, and it'll all just reflect in there perfectly. So that eased the load quite a bit once I brought Blender into the mix. But the
that's
2D
interesting
stuff,
that was the easy part.
Yeah, it was. And I think I even said in that talk, like, there's tutorials online where, CG Cookie has done quite a bit on how to make the best car paint. And it's layers and layers of clear coats and sparkles and all that. And, for that thing, I literally just made glossy black, done, and that was it.
That's so great, and I think it illustrates something that I think I see in a lot of like professional VFX work, is that it's dead simple a lot of the time. Like it's just very basic objects with stuff like pasted on, or really simple materials.
For sure, yeah.
And I think that goes a long way. And I think that's pretty encouraging for people to see, that they don't have to like do anything ridiculous. They don't have to be like super professional or like get every tiny little detail down to the little molecule in order to like get something that'll just like look okay in a film.
And you can always go back and fix it if it's not. Like if I had made that glossy black shader, and then when I was patching it, I realized, the paint really is sparkly and has lots of little metal flakes in it. I could always go back and, re-render my car pass and just replace it in the footage, and it would be updated. But I always start with the most basic.
Yeah.
And if I don't need to go beyond there, I don't. I focus on other things. So.
Nice. We got a question from Sean. He asked, good places to learn more about the topic of compositing in general.
That's a good question.
Besides OpenVisualFX, of course.
Yeah, I try. I don't actually. Well, my Natron tutorial is kind of like a beginner's tutorial, but I haven't done very many beginner things. Just because there's so much out there already. Like if you just go to YouTube and search around for Nuke or After Effects tutorials, that's a great place. Like back in the day was Video Copilot, which I imagine he's still popular.
I think he's still around. I haven't seen anything recently.
Yeah, me neither. But his old stuff is just great, and it's all After Effects. But those same techniques can transfer over very easily to Blender. You do have to know the UI and know where the tools are, and if he's going to draw a mask in After Effects, you'll have to know how to draw a mask in Blender. But what that mask is doing and how you use it is exactly the same in both programs. So yeah, if you're comfortable in Blender, look at any software. There's a Hit Film Express. Do you know that program? I don't know if anybody knows that one. It's sort of like
The name sounds familiar, but I don't think I've ever looked at it.
yeah, it's like a After Effects clone kind of, and there's a free version and then there's a paid version.
Okay.
And they put out tutorials all the time. And it's very similar to what Video Copilot does. And they'll break it down. They've even used Blender a little bit. They break it down really easy and simply. It's all really basic stuff, and it's really great. And
Oh, nice.
so yeah, I haven't done many beginner things. My goal was to only show really advanced stuff, which is not really advanced, but like all the stuff that we do at work every day that people don't know about. Even like that little edge, that hair detail trick I was just talking about. Like a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, that could save somebody just
Yeah,
a day of work.
exactly. So it's little things like that that I was hoping to really focus my sight on. That's why it always ends up being boring things like lens distortion or getting your project from Nuke to Blender and back and forth, because that's stuff I do every day at work. And if you are trying to use Blender in a professional pipeline, you're going to run into some issues. And those are the kinds of things I've been focusing on a bit, but I do have some things coming up actually that just again need the time. Hopefully, I'll get a few weeks off here and can jump on some things. But
very cool.
But yeah, that's what I would say is look around YouTube for Nuke and After Effects things. Video Copilot's always great. The Hit Film guys are good. FX Home, I think that's what they're called. FX Home. And just transfer those over to Blender. Hopefully it's not too tricky. And then, of course, you can always email me and ask me questions. I try and answer everything. So if you have questions about, hey, I saw this in After Effects, and how do I do it in Blender?
Oh, nice. Yeah, or Twitter's always a good place to go for stuff like that, because like
Twitter's
even if you don't know, somebody else can jump in, and it's great.
Yeah, I use Twitter myself like that all the time. You've answered me. I've asked particle things, and you've come back with the right answer that I've been able to get on with my job. So thank you for that.
Hey, anytime. Omar asks, have you always been able to pull off whatever VFX is asked of you, or are there times when you just have to say like, sorry, this is not possible?
I think most times I've been able to do stuff. I think there was a, usually it's when anytime that I've had something like taken off of me because I wasn't able to get what they wanted, I think it's because the client didn't know what they want. So the client wasn't communicating what they wanted. The supervisor couldn't tell me what they wanted, and were just telling me, just take stabs, like try and do this, try and do this, try and do this.
Yeah.
So
Classic,
you keep trying.
Classic scenario.
Exactly. And after a week or two of that, they're finally like, you know what, we're going to take that off you, and we'll just do it. We'll deal with it. So there's been things like that. But even that, not a whole lot. So I guess I kind of make it clear as to where my strengths are. Like when at COSA, for example, when I interviewed, I told them like, yeah, I know 3D. The program's free, so it doesn't cost you anything, and I know it really well. But I'm not going to be doing any CG characters running around, because that's just not what I do. But hey, if you need birds, or if you need particles or explosions, like I can do that stuff. I can't do the best explosion, but background stuff or whatever, like I can do all that. So I just make it really clear. And they've come to me many times and said like, hey, so we've got like this shot that we need this for and this, and I'll say, oh, I don't think I can do that. That I can do, but not that other one. So then they'll give me what I can handle, and then go to the CG
nice.
department. It's really nice.
Very, very good of them not to be like, well, figure it out anyway.
Yeah, it's great.
We need a full character running down a hill tomorrow.
Yeah, can't do that. You've come to the wrong person for that.
What's it like to adapt to the changing tools over the years? Since you've been in VFX for a bit, and I'm sure tools have adapted along with how things are going and are always updating. Like, and you in particular, I always see learning new stuff. You're like constantly watching tutorials, it seems like.
I'm trying. Because there's so much cool stuff to learn. Like there's a few weeks ago I was on hard surface modeling, right? Like I see what people are doing with like box cutter and hard ops and all that, and I'm like, like when they do those spheres that have so many like sci-fi techie details.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to make that. How do I do that? Like, I know the basics of modeling, and if I spent a while, I'm sure I could get it. But I want to know how to do it. I want to crank that out in like a night.
Yeah.
So I buy a bunch of tutorials and I focus for like a week and try and learn ins and outs of every Boolean trick and every bevel trick and every how do I clean up geometry, and it's just like I love that stuff.
That's cool. You just have have fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, and keeping up with the tools is kind of the same. It's like whatever I find exciting, that's what I want to learn. That's why I got into it to begin with, because it just like all of it looked fun. Like I when I was learning creatures and makeup effects, digital effects was I think Jurassic Park had come out 2 years before I got into school for effects. So digital was still really new, but creatures and makeup had been out for a while. And I just loved it all. I didn't love one thing. I loved it all. And I even though now I mostly focus on digital, I still love every aspect of it. I love environments. I love, like the hard surface stuff. I love the effects. I love the smoke sims and liquid sims and literally everything. Like right now I'm doing a tutorial for 3D World magazine on texture painting, which is ridiculous. Like they reached out and said, hey, we want to do some Blender stuff. And I'm like, great, I'm a compositor. Let's do some compositing. And then it was at the time where I was doing all that hard surface stuff, and I was looking into like painting, right? Because I want to be really good at painting. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, everybody, like I know Substance Painter, of course. That's what everybody's talking about. We have it at work. Everybody uses it for everything. I'm like, maybe I should learn it. So I was watching a few like basic entry level tutorials, and I'm like, Blender can do that. Blender can do that. Blender can do that. Why would I learn this? Blender can do all this. So certainly there's things it can't. It does faster and better and easier. But for the basic stuff that I wanted to do, Blender can do it all. So I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll just practice in Blender. And then I tried Armor Paint. And that is literally, every node is exactly the same as Blender. So I stopped learning that. And maybe I'll go back to them. But for now, for just the basic painting stuff, I was like, I can make this look really cool just with Blender. So, and I mentioned that to the 3D World guy, and he's like, oh, that'd be cool. Let's see that. So now I'm doing, a compositor is doing a 3D painting tutorial for magazine, which is ridiculous.
That's awesome.
It's probably going to have mistakes all over it, but whatever. It's like, hopefully other people will realize it just like I realized it. Like, hey, I don't need Painter for the basic stuff I'm doing.
Sure.
If I was doing this every day, all day, 24 hours a day, yes, I would get Painter, of course. But I'm just doing a model every now and then. Blender's perfect. So I'm just trying to convey that kind of thing.
That's cool. And I'm sure like when you do see a new tool or new something that like you just know that that's going to save you a bunch of time, it's impossible not to like want to learn it, because it's like something that you've spent hours doing and then can like just figure it out for you. You're like, okay, yes, give it to me. Like
absolutely. But then on the flip side, that's also the magic of Blender, is that because Blender does a little bit of everything, it saves you time, right? Like you don't have to learn the whole Armor Paint UI. You can, once you realize Armor Paint and Blender are, at this point in time anyway, are very similar, almost identical. You're like, well, why do I need to learn that UI then? Why don't I just do it in Blender? So you can kind of,
There you go.
Yeah, but
have you checked out B Painter for texture painting?
I haven't bought it yet, but I've watched some videos of it, and man, it's really tempting.
Yeah,
it's really tempting. It's amazing.
Another just left field question: are deadlines and workload crazier today than 20 years ago, or about the same?
I don't know. They're crazier for me because I do TV mostly now. Mm-hmm. And TV's deadlines are sometimes insane. So they're crazier for me. I don't know if I was still doing films. I don't know. I imagine they're still crazy and there's still insane overtime. I still hear the stories, of course, from everybody working on Marvel movies and all that stuff. Just the insane overtime and all that stuff. And Uh, so I'd bet it's just as bad as ever. Would be my guess. But for me, they've gotten a little easier because I'm sort of like at work now. I'm kind of like the old grumpy guy. Like, if 20 years ago, if they asked for overtime, I'm like, heck yeah, I'll be here all weekend. Should I just stay here? Like, can you buy me lunch?
To bring my sleeping bag.
Yeah, exactly. But now I'm like, 6 o'clock, I'm out of here. And if you want me to work overtime, you got to tell me by noon, or else I'm not working overtime. So I'm just like the grumpy old guy now.
Nice. I bet that feels good.
It's it's not. Sometimes I feel bad, like when firing time comes, I'm going to be the first to go because I'm the grumpy one. But it's not. I love Cosa, and I think they like me. So, and I do plenty of overtime. I still do it, but I'd let all the young kids who are super eager to jump in there and do it.
Sure,
they are welcome to do it. So
it is kind of wild that like there's the whole industry has like this big expected overtime thing, which is I mean, I guess there's that in like what finance is kind of like that as well.
Maybe,
but I don't know of any like plumbers or
right,
pretty much anybody else that's like
right
has that just expected of them all the time.
I know. And if your pipe breaks in the middle of the night and you need an emergency plumber to come out and do it, he's getting double time to do it, right? Like so that same stuff, like I read, especially it's slowed down a little bit now, but a few years ago, it felt like every day you'd read a new story about a visual effects facility that went under or that hadn't paid their employees for 6 months and all that. It's sad for the industry, but then I think, like, why were you people going in for 6 months without getting paid? Stop going in. Like, it's not, if you were a plumber and you showed up for 1 day without being paid, if you knew you weren't going to get your check on Friday, would you go to work as a plumber? No, you wouldn't. Would you, or anything, Like, why is film different? Like, why do people think it's okay to work for 6 months on a movie without getting paid? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Is there anything in the sort of like culture or like work environment that you wish you could change?
Yeah. I kind of wish we had a union. Like, it's weird saying that, and I don't know how to make that happen. And I don't know. I've been at studios when they've tried to like real subtly kind of unionize, and I'm not like the first person to like jump on that because I don't know how all that works exactly.
Yeah.
But when you look at if every single person on a set has a union except for visual effects people, like
that's super interesting. Really,
the guy that plugs in the electrical cords has a union, and the guy that runs the camera is not allowed to even touch that electrical cord.
Huh?
Like, that's just how it goes.
Had no idea.
Visual effects, we have no union. We have no protections of any kind. So that's why we get abused all the time. That's why there's unpaid overtime everywhere and going under all the time. And I even heard that back when I was working on Life of Pi, when we took the 6 month hiatus in the middle of it while they reshot some stuff, I even heard that we weren't paid. We were not allowed to let go of everybody that had done R&D because we had all these experts now that were doing like the tiger and all these animals, and we had to retain them, but we weren't getting paid. So it's like this weird contractual. It's like they make you lose money.
Yeah, that's super weird and kind of messed up. Like, is VFX work in general something that like you'd recommend to somebody if somebody's like learning 3D, learning video, and like is excited about that? Would you recommend that they go into VFX, or would you recommend like maybe like turn a little bit left and do something similar? But
I would, but I would be. In fact, I've even thought about doing a blog post about this, but I don't want to. It feels really negative, and I don't want to post like a big ranting blog post.
Sure.
I would just say, yeah, come do it, but don't let yourself be taken advantage of. Like, don't be afraid to say, like, if they ask you to work a 14-hour day and you're like, okay, well, I'm getting double time after 8 or whatever, time and a half after 8 hours, and they say no, then don't be afraid to say, then no, I'm not working overtime, and leave. And if one of you does that, yeah, sure, they'll probably find that somebody else standing out on the corner dying to come in and work on the next Marvel movie for free. But if you all do that together, if the whole studio says, no, we're not working without overtime pay, then they can't make anything. They have to do it.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, I just wish everybody would do that, not let yourself be taken advantage. If we all did it, it would be a much better industry for everyone. Much better. I mean, movies like Life of Pi and Yogi Bear was another one that Rhythm and Hues worked on that they lost money on, supposedly. But, if you look online, Yogi Bear made millions and millions of dollars. And how did the visual effects studio that worked on it lose money when it was millions and millions of dollars for the studio? Like it's just, we need like a bargaining. That shouldn't happen. We just need some sort of bargaining power. And if we all just stick together, the closest we ever came was that time at Rhythm and Hues when it was going under those few months. But other than that, I've never seen it. Like I've never heard of a studio like everybody just getting upset and walking out all together. So now your movie literally can't get finished unless you do what they ask, and they're not asking unreasonable stuff, but I'd almost like to see that happen. I don't want to be part of it. Maybe 20 years ago I'd have been happy to, but now I don't. But,
well, it seems like a worthwhile blog post at least. Is
it
shipping,
just sounds like
like outsourcing stuff over to like other countries or whatever, is that a possible like roadblock for VFX workers if they're like, oh, we'll just have like some people over in China do it for like half the price?
I don't know actually. That's certainly prominent now, and that's standard practice. So I don't know. I don't know how that factors in to any of that, because a lot of the places, there's companies like ILM and Weta and Digital Domain that and old Rhythm and Hues, like there's so many experts there that do what they do, and they're the best in the world at it. And that's why we all know their name. That's why everybody in the industry knows who ILM is or Weta. And you can't get that, right? If ILM's, well, I don't know, they might even have a union, I'm not sure, but if they say, well, we're not going to work on it without a union, you can't go get what they're going to do elsewhere. There's only a couple other places that can do it to that level. If all your movie needs is rotoscoping and wire removals, then you can absolutely. I'm not saying that's all outsourcing. That's all other countries do. They certainly do amazing work everywhere. But it's a trickier thing, and I don't know how much it would affect the industry either way. Having that capability, if everybody walked out and they just said, all right, we're just going to take it to India. I don't know if that kind of thing would work or not. I have no idea.
Right. Interesting.
Be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure something will happen in the next couple of years, and hopefully for the better. We'll see.
I hope so.
On a more positive note, if there's anything else you want to chat about, then
I'm happy to chat about anything anybody wants to.
All right.
Actually, I didn't know if we were just going to talk visual effects or Blender, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you had a shot that you showed me right before we jumped on. That was like a house kind of blown up.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I didn't know how how detailed we were going to get if we actually wanted to see work and all that. So I grabbed this one little clip of this house. This is there's a show called Pennyworth, which I think it airs on the network called Epic. I'm not sure. But I didn't know if we were going to get into the details of like, hey, show us some Blender work. But this was something I did some Blender on, which if I can find the screen share, there it is. Let me do that, and then let me go share screen, and hopefully you can see this. Can you see this? The house?
Not yet.
Not yet? Oh, wait. Start sharing. There we go. Now you can see it?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, yeah. So this was a house explosion on on the show Pennyworth, which I think is, I haven't watched it, but I think it's Batman's butler. It's like his backstory. And they ended the first season with this house explosion. And I didn't actually do the compositing on this shot, but they asked me for help with debris. So I did all of these debris passes. And it's just a really short clip of that. It's like, 3 seconds long.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just like, this is the kind of stuff I like to do at work, where this wasn't even my shot, to composite on, but they came to me and they said, we need some cool debris. So I would just, set up emitters and set up shards and different things. I think I used some fracture modifier build, which is a great build of Blender. I sure wish they would update that out of 2.7.9.
Oh, yeah. That's fun to play with.
Yeah, it's so great. And I still keep 2.7.9 around for that build. But yeah, it's just, the RFX department was doing all the smoke, and they even did some other debris, like the actual glass shattering from the windows. They did that. But I went ahead and just did some other debris, like rock chunks and wood from the door. And I even have papers on the side of the house here. There's like papers that blow out and kind of flutter. It kind of cuts off a little bit early, but
yeah, like I can see the papers floating off on the right. That's a nice touch.
Yeah.
So was the modeling the very basic front of the house? Is that just a it
wasn't even me, honestly.
Oh, really?
It was the match moving department did that. Ian, who actually emailed me right before this started saying he was going to watch, so hopefully he's watching.
Oh, nice.
But he would match move things and do like a basic geometry just to get the set like where it's supposed to be and all that. And this sequence actually had a whole bunch of shots of this house, and you want to make sure that the house is centered and in the same spot for all the shots. So if you run like a sim on it, or like an explosion or whatever, you can then import other cameras, and you don't have to change the actual positioning of the house and the sims and all that. You just bring in other cameras. So his department, or him himself, solved the camera, figured out all the lens distortion, and then built the basic geometry. I think I put in the windows because I think I needed. They gave me the house, and then I put in these little windows just to see where every window was. And then I kind of went from there. And I think for this breakdown, I kind of put all these into the same project, but these were all different projects, like debris 1, debris 2, 3, 4, 5, door debris 1, paper debris 2, 3, 4. Like it was a whole bunch of passes.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. I think the door especially, like, you can't quite see the whole like finished shot, but like right where it comes out from the explosion and shatters in like the wood planks, that looks so good.
Yeah, it turned out really good.
Yeah, like what we were talking about earlier when it comes to just like fairly basic particle or like fracture stuff. I'm guessing this is just rigid body whatever, but getting the shape of the emitter right and like blasting the right force through it, it looks spot on.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was actually the door was two things. It was fracture modifier, where I had like a door shape and then just kind of knocked like a big sphere into it, which you actually don't see in the wireframe, but you can see it in the finished shot. You can see up near the door, if I can get this. I can't get it to pause right, but up near the door, there's some that are closer to the door that kind of retain that door shape a bit, and then kind of they don't fly out very far. That was a fracture modifier build sim, and then I just put in other particle emitters with shards as the particle and blasted those out farther and in random directions, and combined all together, it really gives you that feel. Because if you try and get everything in this, there's a good shot of it. You can see the door kind of splitting. You can almost see the sphere shape.
Yeah, gives it the like shape of the explosion.
Yeah, trying to get all this in one sim, it's just impossible. There's no way to get the perfect look. So, that door alone is at least 4, right? It's like 1 fraction modifier and 3 particle systems at least, I think. So
Oh, interesting. So is it all baked in the same file, or are some of them in different files then?
they're all different files, all
Okay.
of them. Yep. It makes it really easy to set up, and you don't have to worry. Like I might have different forces on this one over here, and if you drop in 5 other particle systems, you then have to limit where that force goes and blah blah blah, and it may change the look of it. So it's easier to just do them all in different projects, and fast, easy, works great. So, and then you just render out the element, and like I was saying earlier, for these when I gave them to the compositor, I didn't give her any passes. I just rendered it out, lit with motion blur and everything, and just said, "Here you go," and she just dropped it in. It was done. So,
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice
yeah,
and simple.
really fun. Yep. So that's the kind of stuff I use Blender for all the time at work, and I'm kind of I have people at work now that just come to me specifically for smoke or particles or birds, because they know I can just crank out whatever they need really fast, and it's not a big deal. So
Yeah, they know you're the bird guy.
yeah, pretty much. So
There's another
Yeah.
question from
yeah.
let's see. Answer Sean's. Is it the more challenging the shot, the more you charge for it, or no matter the complexity, is it always about the same rate?
Oh, that's interesting. I can't speak for the studios I work for. I have no idea how much they charge. But when I do freelance work, I try and break it down by how long I think it'll take. 3D and 2D will also change it as well. Not so much what is the 3D, but like a few years ago, I did a feature film from home. And Kent, actually, I hired Kent for a little bit of it
Nice.
to do some hair work and stuff like that. But when I was doing that, I did a bunch of 3D and a bunch of 2D. And I think 3D tends to charge a bit more, right? Because I know I'm going to have to get a bit more into it, right? Especially if it's just something, if the 2D is just like replacing a sky or removing wires or whatever, fixing something in a frame that they did wrong, removing a crew member or something like that. That's like the cheapest end. So it's kind of a mix between what does it entail, how long will it take. Generally, I'll look at, if somebody just says, hey, we have a short film and there's just 10 shots, take a look at them. That I'll look at them all as a whole and figure out, I think I can get it done in like a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Always round up a little bit. So then I'll say, okay, maybe like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and then figure out my time for that. And then that's what I would charge for. And then if one of those shots is 3D, then I would break that one out maybe separately and say, well, this one, I'd still include it in the main thing, but I'd be like, this one's going to cost a bit more because I have to go in and model or match move or whatever. But it depends on the project.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. We've actually gotten a lot of questions recently about like how to price freelancing and stuff like that. So we'll probably have to do a whole separate either blog post or stream with a couple animators or something, figure that out, because can be a tough question, especially when you're just starting out, to know like what is your work worth.
For sure.
And it's hard to like objectively put a little dollar sign on.
Yeah. I've done projects where they've asked me to bid on it, and I sit down and I figure it out and I talk to the other people I want to bring in and what they're going to charge. And then, I'll go back to them and I'll be like, all right, well, for that whole thing, it's going to be $30,000 and we need like 2 months. And then they'll say, whoa, the budget's only 24. And then you just kind of have to be like, either you walk away or you're like, okay, I guess that's going to cut it.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of weird, you never know. It's like everything is different. Every project is different. So it's a tricky thing.
Yeah. I guess the very last question that I have, and on a good note, you are a man of fine taste when it comes to chocolate, I've heard. What's the like special way of making hot chocolate that everybody needs to try?
I would say if you're only used to hot chocolate in packets, the little Swiss Miss packets or the Nestle packets, stop drinking that. If you want a hot chocolate, and go buy a chocolate bar. Don't buy Hershey's or Cadbury or any. Go to like a drugstore and get like a Lindt chocolate bar or a Ghirardelli chocolate bar.
Okay.
Something like 60 or 70%, and melt at least half of that bar into a mug of milk.
Ooh.
If you want it really good, if you want like a dessert hot chocolate, melt the whole bar in. And that's it. That'll be the best hot chocolate you've ever had. If all you've ever had is the packets, that'll change your world.
I keep seeing your posts on that, and I've actually never tried it. I've thought for like forever, like every time I see it, I'm like, oh, that looks delicious, and then I never follow through on actually trying it.
It's so easy. It's like so easy. And don't be afraid of like spices. Like grab cardamom or grab cinnamon or we always have like pumpkin spice, like for making pies, a little pumpkin spice thing. Dump a bunch of that in with the as you're melting it. Oh man,
amazing!
Can't beat it. So good. Clove, nutmeg, those are all amazing.
Even in the summer, or you gotta wait till winter?
All year long, all year. Because everybody always says like it's hot chocolate, but everybody drinks their coffee hot all summer.
True. It's true.
So, yeah, but you can easily pour a hot chocolate over ice too if you want. It's just as good.
Ooh, get like very thick chocolate milk. That sounds good.
So amazing.
Okay, amazing. we got one last question that snuck in, and I think it's a really good one. Can compositors work in the game industry? Is compositing there too? Or also a larger version of that, I guess, is what's the like switchover? Is it pretty easy if you are in VFX to go work in a game industry, or is it usually people kind of stay in their own lane and that's kind of what they're known for and what they stick with?
I think for compositors, there's not much crossover. At least not that I've experienced or heard about. I have a lot of friends, especially when Rhythm and Hues went under, and everybody went their own ways. I feel like at least half of those people went into games. But it was all the 3D people. It was all the effects people or the lighters or the modelers. If you do that kind of stuff, there's different aspects of it, I think, to learn. Like, lighting for a feature film is different than lighting for a game. But at least you know all the tools and you know how to do it and how to get looks and all that kind of stuff. So the skill set's there. You'll just have to learn what the tastes are. But that changes from film to film as well. So maybe for a lighter or a 3D person, moving from film to games is literally the same thing. Compositing, I don't know of. I don't think there's a whole lot in games.
That would be my guess, because I mean you're not using video footage, but
yeah,
could be it's just somewhere above my head, outside of my
I don't know. I've often wondered with animated movies, like, because I have a lot of friends that work at DreamWorks, and I actually only live like maybe a mile from DreamWorks, and I always thought like, oh, it'd be great to work there, but I don't think I know anything 3D enough to work there. And I always think like they don't hire compositors, but then every once in a while in a making of video, I'll hear them mention, then we handed it off to the compositors, and I'll be like, oh, I could work on like, I don't know, Wreck-It Ralph or something. I don't know.
That'd be cool.
So
I mean, I'm sure like color correction and all that stuff is still really big. Probably removing less wires, but maybe not. I don't know, depending on.
No, if they've got green screen in their animated movie, then they've done something horribly wrong. Oh,
that'd be very funny. They're just rendering out all their characters on green screen.
Yeah.
That'd make for a pretty funny, like, I don't know, April Fool's YouTube tutorial or something.
I've seen they've done it with old Disney animated things like Bambi on a green screen and doing stuff. It's pretty funny.
Nice. And then from Sean, this is important, so I think this is a good one to end on.
Sure.
Dark chocolate, milk chocolate, or semi-sweet?
Dark, always dark.
Always
in
dark?
fact, always. Well, not always, I guess, but
I guess you're already adding it to milk, so like it is already.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also the more I got into chocolate, the more I learned that those terms are very vague. So what the industry likes is percentages, because milk chocolate in America is very different from milk chocolate anywhere else. So what's important is the percentage. If you're having like a 70% bar, 70% of that bar was made from cocoa bean. The other 30% is usually sugar or other things. And that 70% is what's important. Like a Hershey bar in America
is like 2%.
It's 10%, I believe. I've
Oh
always
wow!
understood.
I was like lowballing just for a joke, but that's
Yeah,
actually way lower than I thought.
and I think it's 10 only because in America, 10 is the legal limit for it to still be called chocolate. If you go less than 10, it has to be called chocolatey candy or chocolatey flavored or something like that. So Hershey's uses the minimum amount to still call it chocolate. Whereas I think in Europe, I think the minimum for calling it chocolate is something like 20% or 22 or something like that. So what you want to look at is percentage, because like semi-sweet chocolate, like I don't know what percentage that is. Like you can get chocolate chips that say semi-sweet that are either 56% or 64% or 72%. My favorite range is from like 60 to 80.
Okay.
Anything over 80 starts getting pretty bitter. Anything under 60 is still good. I mean, I'm good with all of it, but 60 to 80 is my favorite range. So.
Okay, I will. I'll make a promise. I'll try that and report back and tell you how it goes.
Please do.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for chatting. I hope everybody learned at least something new. Found out something cool about working in visual effects, and I'm sure we'll chat again pretty soon in the future.
That'd be awesome. Thanks
Everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.